couple of days ago, I talked about the need for a shift to a more environmentally sustainable form of life en masse on a cultural level. Basically, my argument was against the idea that individualistic choices, individualistic changes would make any difference, and also that a shift to like an anarcho-primitivist lifestyle also isn't the greatest answer for mass society. Because if we do, if the plan is basically to give up all of our modern comforts and luxuries, it's very unlikely that the vast majority of people are going to get on board with this, and that's what we're going to need in order to really make any difference. But I left something out that's kind of important, and that's that there have been plenty of civilizations, and there are plenty of still existing civilizations that live in relative harmony with nature. There are many indigenous civilizations that have lived in relative harmony with nature with minimal ecological impact for thousands, if not millions, of years. Many of the practices of agriculture and hunter-gatherer societies, they tend to be generative of ecosystemic health. The indigenous peoples of North America, for example, they basically created the food forests that the European settlers encountered that made them think that this was a land of natural and magical bounty when it was actually the hard work of many thousands of generations of indigenous people that made it that way. And so, of course, there's lots that we can learn from the lifestyles and attitudes and histories of these indigenous peoples, but we can't just wholesale adopt that way of life for a few main reasons. One is that we don't really have the ecological framework to be able to support that. Like, all the forests are already gone. Most of the natural environments that supported indigenous peoples aren't available to us as settler people. And so in order to even hope to adopt that lifestyle, we would have to first regenerate the biosphere to the extent where we could. The attitudes, though, of indigenous peoples, that we live in harmony with nature, that we are part of nature, are an important component towards getting back to that place. But there's another challenge, and that is that the lifestyles that are used by indigenous peoples don't necessarily scale to the extent that they would need to in order for it to be adopted en masse. We have 7 billion plus people on the planet, and although it would be lovely if we could live in a low-density hunter-gatherer society at large, it would be generally impossible. We don't have a planet that's large enough for each person to live in that way. It requires a significant amount of land, a significant amount of nature to be available for a person to be living in that style of life. And so there's something to be said for the efficiency that is involved in, European-style settler agriculture. But of course, the settler agriculture that we have now is incredibly toxic, incredibly biocidal to natural environs, so that needs to be done away with. What I'm proposing here is kind of a hybrid, where we need to adopt the attitudes of indigenous peoples, wherein we see ourselves as not separate from nature, not dominating of nature, but rather to be in harmony with nature as part of nature, to accept nature as identical with us. And so being informed by that, we then need to act with regard to our food production and medicine production and resource production with that in mind, so as not to be dominating, denuding, sterilizing nature in order to serve us. Rather, we need to operate in a way as we're accumulating the resources that we need for survival, we are also being generative towards nature, generative towards the biosphere at large. This is just an oversimplified overview of this topic, and it's something that I want to dive into in much greater detail. Environmentalism is obviously quite important to me, but I've somehow come down with a head cold despite socially distancing and living under pandemic restrictions for the last however many months, and my nose is running. So I'm going to cut it short today. Hopefully I'll feel better soon. And no, it's not the COVID. Anyway, I do make videos daily, so if you enjoy this content and any other content, check out those videos if you like it, and like and share and subscribe and all those other algorithmic things. And thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.